y bienvenido a mi canal. Yo me llamo Desiree. Soy una abogada afro-latina licenciada practicando la ley criminal, pero como todos ustedes, a mí me fascina cuando estamos hablando de casos de crímenes reales. En este video vamos a continuar hablando de David. Si quieren más video en español, nada más dime allá abajo. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Desiree. I'm a licensed and practicing Afro-Latina criminal attorney who, much like the rest of you, has a severe fascination with true crime cases. Listen. You guys, so we've done a multi-part series on Singer David on this channel where I just gave you guys, all the updates as I had them. I know there was a video where I went through the prelim brief that was filed by the prosecution in anticipation of the first preliminary hearing setting, and then somehow it got continued. I know that David's prelim has already occurred. And I know that the court found that there was probable cause to proceed as to the charges pending against him. So let's talk about what exactly that means right now.
Good afternoon. My name is Nathan Hochman. I'm the Los Angeles County District Attorney. Today I am here to announce that Judge Charlene Olmedo held David Anthony Burke, who goes by the name of a Singer David spelled D4VD, to answer for the horrific and barbaric killing of a 14-year-old at the time, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She has held him to answer for first-degree murder with the special circumstances of lying in wait, doing this crime for financial gain, and murdering a witness to an investigation. David Anthony Burke has also been held to answer for the mutilation of the remains of Celeste Rivas Hernandez on September 8th, 2025, and he has also been held to answer for engaging in continuous lewd and lascivious acts with a 13-year-old. What we have seen in this preliminary hearing, and the preliminary hearing was conducted by one of our most experienced deputy district attorneys, who is right here, Beth Silverman, and her team, working with the Los Angeles Police Department's Robbery Homicide Division. They methodically presented over 5 different days before Judge Olmedo the evidence that showed, and at this point we had to show it by probable cause, but by probable cause, and I would argue by an overwhelming amount of probable cause, and we will eventually prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. It followed the timeline of the interactions between Celeste Rivas Hernandez when she started as a 12-year-old, then a 13-year-old, then a 14-year-old who never got to see her 15th birthday. Because in the intervening time where she had these interactions with Mr. Burke, he engaged in this sexual conduct with a 13-year-old repeatedly, over and over again. This came out in text messages that were presented, in videos and photographs that were presented to the judge that showed this sexual activity. Ms. Silverman methodically tracked the timeline of their interactions during 2022, 23, 24, 25, that eventually led to the time where Celeste Rivas Hernandez went over to Mr. Burke's house in the Hollywood Hills on April 23rd, 2025, and has never been heard of again. But what Ms. Silverman and her team were able to show to Judge Olmedo is that on April 23rd, 2025, what actually happened was the brutal and horrific murder of Ms. Hernandez. And thereafter, over the ensuing 5 months, how her body was chopped up, left in the front trunk of a Tesla, only to be discovered on September 8th, 2025, after the car, and this is Mr. Burke's car, had been towed to a tow yard. What now happens is that there will be an information that will be filed within the next week or so. That information will track these 3 felony counts that have already appeared in the complaint. August 31st will be the arraignment on that information. Thereafter, there will be a trial that will be set. That trial can be set as early as 60 days. And as we saw with the preliminary hearing, where the defense demanded that they have that preliminary hearing done within the time that the law allows, whatever time they want a preliminary hearing, we were ready. Often preliminary hearings in a case of this complexity take many, many more months than you have seen in this case. But when the defense demanded a quick preliminary hearing, we said, bring it on. And that's exactly what we did. If the defense wants a trial 60 days out or whenever they want this trial, we will be ready for that trial. So at this point, again, we don't have the one additional consideration is that Mr. Burke now is eligible for death penalty. The death penalty considerations are now being weighed. Part of that consideration will be any submission that the defense wants to submit to the district attorney's office. It is something that we will consider on whether or not we will seek the death penalty. At this point, the death penalty determination has not been made.
Okay, you guys, I'm going to do a recap just really quickly because I know not everyone sees all of my videos and I don't want to tell you guys to go back and watch the videos. And I know there's a method by which I can just insert that clip into this video, but I'm not all that tech savvy. I got a full-time job. I got stuff to do. I don't know about what the kids be doing. Okay, so let me just talk to you guys really briefly and just tell you guys a little bit of recap about what happened here. Okay, so if you've never heard me say this before, a preliminary hearing merely is a hearing by which the court determines whether enough or not there's enough probable cause to proceed as to the charges that the specific defendant is facing. I'm going to say that again. A preliminary hearing is merely a hearing by which the court determines whether or not there's enough probable cause to proceed as to the charges a specific defendant is facing. I remember telling you guys in a prior video, because there had been at least 2 or 3 continuances of David's prelim that, one, I would not be surprised if it didn't go at all. Obviously, I'm wrong. So, whatever. And I'm not necessarily wrong because I didn't say it wasn't going to go. I said I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't go, but the number of continuances was a little bit concerning to me. But 2, I told you guys that if it did go, the court was inevitably going to find probable cause. And I stand by that. And look what happened, right? And the reason for that is the threshold for PC at a PH, so probable cause at a preliminary hearing, is so low. It's so low. It's so low. Like for a prosecutor to lose a preliminary hearing, I'm not saying it's not heard of. It has happened before. It does happen, but it's not likely. I think PC is just such a low burden, and the court is instructed to give the prosecution every reasonable inference ever. So it's I knew the court was going to find PC, period, right? Now, what does that mean for David moving forward? Basically, all it means is the case isn't dismissed. That's literally all it means. There's enough probable cause. The court found that there's probable cause, and now we move on to the next steps of the case. Before we go any further, okay? Before we go any further, I want to refer us way back to one of my very first videos about David when I went through the complaint with you guys, okay? So I'm going to just review that with you guys, and let's just talk about it right here and right now. Let's go. So as you guys can see here, it says the people of the state of California as the plaintiff and David Anthony Burke, date of birth March 28th, 2005 as the defendant. It says felony complaint, case number is 26 CJCF 02399. Count 1 says the following. On or about April 23rd, 2025, in the county of Los Angeles, the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony, was committed by David Anthony Burke, who did, unlawfully and with malice aforethought, murder Celeste R., a human being. It is further alleged that the murder of Celeste R. was intentional and was carried out by the defendant, David Anthony Burke, for financial gain within the meaning of Penal Code Section 1902A1. It is further alleged that pursuant to Penal Code PC 190.2A10, that Celeste R. was a witness to a crime and was intentionally killed because of that fact. It is further alleged that the murder of Celeste R. was committed by defendant David Anthony Burke and that the defendant intentionally killed the victim by means of lying in wait within the meaning of Penal Code Section 190.2A15. It is further alleged that in the commission and attempted commission of the above offense, that said defendants, David Anthony Burke, personally used a deadly weapon and dangerous weapon, to wit, sharp instrument, said use not being an element of the above offense within the meaning of Penal Code Section 12022B1, and causing the above offense to be a serious felony within the meaning of Penal Code Section 1192.7C23. Okay, you guys, let's just stop right there and let me explain that to you. So let's talk about the first part of that the prosecution is alleging that David killed Celeste for financial gain. As I told you guys in a prior video, what is the financial gain that they're alleging David did this for? His booming music career, right? Because according to them, and it is all alleged still so far, Celeste was making threats to expose David for allegedly being with her, and she was a minor at the time, and that would ruin his finances. This is financially motivated. So he killed her allegedly to stop her destruction of his booming music career and halt his finances.
All we can do at the district attorney's office is bring justice in this case by bringing that killer to justice. That killer is David Anthony Burke, and we intend to bring him to justice.
Over 5 grueling days, Hochman's prosecutors presented graphic evidence, videos, sexual photos, detailed testimony, and forensic material they say proves David Anthony Burke, better known as David, impregnated, murdered, and mutilated his then 13-year-old girlfriend, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. And then there was a text message that investigators say Rivas Hernandez sent to Burke days before his tour was announced, threatening to destroy him. It read in part, "I swear to God, I will kill you. I will strangle you to effing death, bro. I will end your career and your life. I will damage anything."
And if you guys remember, they said that Celeste was a witness to a crime and she was killed because of that fact. What is the crime that the prosecution is alleging that Celeste was the witness of, and by, virtue of being a witness of that crime was then allegedly killed? Sexual assault. She was sexually assaulted by David. He was a person of age. She was a minor at the time. And because of that, being a witness to that and subsequently allegedly making threats to expose that, she was allegedly murdered by David, allegedly. So that's the prosecution's theory.
The singer David back in court today. His testimony continues in preliminary hearing for the singer accused in the brutal murder of a local teen girl. We're expecting to hear even more graphic evidence today. Eyewitness News reporter Tim Caputo live outside the courthouse. He was there yesterday as well and has more on today's activities. Tim?
And Philip, good morning to you. This morning's testimony, kind of a continuation of where we left off yesterday afternoon, talking about David's finances, the up-and-coming singer making a staggering amount of money in the first couple of years of his career, reportedly more than $10 million in just a 2-year span, likely setting the stage for what prosecutors believe is the motive in this case. They believe that David killed Celeste Rivas Hernandez because of a sexual relationship he was having with that 14-year-old, knowing if that came to light, it would potentially ruin the budding musician's financially lucrative career. Today, the talk in the courthouse was all about money and relationships, revealing the 20-year-old artist, the alt-pop singer, purchased 2 homes at the time, only 20 years old. He made upwards of $10 million in the first few years of his music career. At the time, though, prosecutors say David was also in a sexual relationship with Rivas Hernandez, who was 13 at the time. And they claim he killed her last spring because she threatened to reveal the relationship, which would, by all accounts, ruin his career. Rivas Hernandez's parents were once again sitting front row in the courtroom for day 2 of this preliminary hearing, but this morning's testimony has been far less graphic. On Tuesday, disturbing photos of the decomposing and dismembered body of that 14-year-old were shown in court as the DA tries to convince this judge in this preliminary hearing that there is more than enough evidence for this murder case to go to trial.
Okay, so lying in wait is this really weird phrase, and I said it to you guys before, but I want you guys to understand that's not a separate charge. It's a special circumstance, okay? It's a special circumstance that elevates the murder charge to a capital offense, which then means that David could be facing the death penalty, right? So lying in wait basically just means that he took Celeste by surprise. He got her by surprise. This was planned and he did it by surprise, and that's how that happened, if that makes sense, right? So basically by adding the lying in wait special circumstance to the offense, the prosecution is all but telling us that they're seeking the death penalty. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Let's see what else. Oh, that it was done by a deadly and dangerous weapon, a sharp instrument. They're just telling us the means by which they believe that David allegedly carried out the murder allegedly against Celeste, allegedly. Okay, let's go ahead and go into the second charge and see what they say. On or between September 7th, 2003 and September 7th, 2004, in the county of Los Angeles, the crime of continuous sexual abuse in violation of Penal Code Section 288.5a, a felony, was committed by David Anthony Burke, who did unlawfully engage in 3 and more acts of substantial sexual conduct, as defined in Penal Code Section 120.066b, and 3 and more lewd and lascivious acts, as defined in Penal Code Section 288, with Celeste R., a child under the age of 14 years, while the defendant resided with and had reoccurring access to the child. Let's stop right there. So do you remember how I said as to the first charge that they were saying Celeste was the witness of a crime? And I explained to you what crime I believe the prosecution is alleging that Celeste was the witness of, which is the sexual assault or sexual abuse, of her, right? So because of her being a witness to that crime, they're alleging that David allegedly killed her. Allegedly. How many times can I say allegedly? Let's just go there. But yeah, so now they charged it as a separate offense, that he was sexually abusing a minor, allegedly. So that's a separate offense. Okay, let's go ahead and continue to the third. Count 3, on or about May 5th, 2025, in the county of Los Angeles, the crime of unlawful mutilation of human remains in violation of Health and Safety Code Section 7052, a felony, was committed by David Anthony Burke, who did willfully and unlawfully mutilate remains known to be human, specifically the remains of Celeste R. Okay, and let's stop right here. I don't remember what document it was that we were reviewing, but I believe it was the prelim brief document that was submitted by the state. But basically, in that document, we learned that there were specific body parts that were mutilated, on top of her being completely dismembered, but specific body parts were mutilated. Well, this is hard, you guys, this is hard. But long story short, they're charging him with that, right? Now, let's get back to the prelim. The reason I wanted to go through the charges again with you guys is because it's important for the understanding of what happened at the prelim, right? So a preliminary hearing is this, and I've done countless preliminary hearings throughout my career. So it's just this. It's basically the prosecution will introduce evidence by virtue of witnesses or testimony, exhibits, whatever, by which they're explaining to the court why they believe there's sufficient probable cause for the charges pending against a specific defendant to proceed, right? I also shared with you guys that in my experience, preliminary hearings are usually rather quick hearings. I'm trying to really think, and I honestly don't think I've ever had a preliminary hearing ever that lasted longer than a day, ever. But because I'm a different type of attorney and I knew based on watching this specific prosecutor, Blair Burke, Beth Silverman, by watching Miss Silverman in the Monica Cementilli trial, that I knew that it was going to be a little bit longer than just a day. I'm actually really proud of her. It was only 5 days. And I say only, genuinely meaning that it was only 5 days, because I feel like she likes to be thorough and I find it long-winded. But regardless, this could have went on much, much longer. Anyway, 5 days of testimony, 5 days of exhibits, 5 days of, witnesses, and the court found that there was probable cause as to the charges that I just read to you for David's case to march on and march forward. Now, let's just talk about some, logistics as to what that necessarily means. Okay, so I've told you guys already that the finding of PC at a PH, so the finding of probable cause at a preliminary hearing, the burden is really low. It's like a low bar, right? So just because the court found that there was probable cause to proceed for the charges against David at this time does not mean that if David were to proceed to a jury trial, that there would be a conviction. Because as we know, in order for there to be a criminal conviction, it would be, for the jurors to find that the prosecution proved the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay, so I don't want us to think just because the court found PC here, that means that David's going to be convicted of anything. We don't know that yet, right? Second, we don't even know if David's going to proceed to a trial. I mean, I assume he will, but we don't know that yet, right? It's my understanding that the next court date in this case is just another procedural court date. I think they called it a rearrangement. Do not quote that. I've never heard of a rearrangement, but different states do things differently, and I'm not licensed in California. But whatever, it's not a trial date. It's just another, procedural date. But anyways, I think at that date, we'll know a little bit more about how this case is going to progress. Maybe at that date, we'll know if David wants to set trial dates or not and see how that goes. I also want us to be mindful of a few more things. And this video is kind of turning out to just be a brain dump, and that's probably because there's really not much for me to say here other than PC was found. That's really, you know what I'm saying, PC was found. And yeah, that's that. But another thing that I want us to be mindful of is just because this case went to PH, so preliminary hearing, and just because the court found probable cause as to the 3 charges that David is currently facing does not bar the prosecution from, if they, do more investigation and think it's appropriate, from adding charges. Does that make sense? I'll say it again. Just because the court found PC as to the charges as they are now, that does not mean that the prosecution cannot add additional charges, okay? The prosecution is allowed to add, amend, modify, whatever, any type of charges up until the day of trial, really. I think even though I've seen prosecutors add charges the morning of trial, that is not a smart strategy. And I don't think that would happen here. Because if you're just pouncing and adding charges, it's unfair to defense. If you're adding something the morning of a trial, it's just not, it's not smart to do that. Inevitably, if you add a charge the morning of trial, there's probably going to be a continuance because you surprise them. And that's just all I'm saying is the prosecution has the right to do it, okay? Let me think what else. What else did I share with you guys? Okay, let's talk about what happens if the prosecution finds that more charges are appropriate, after the PH. Depending on the charges, I'm lying to you. I'm lying to you. It does not depend on the charges. David would be entitled to a preliminary hearing as to the new charges. Let me explain that. The reason I said I'm lying to you is because I remember in one of the videos where we were breaking down exactly what charges qualify for PH, just doing like a super, super, super deep dive. And I'm not going to go through everything that we discussed in that video, so you can go back and watch that one if you would like. But by virtue of being in custody, even if a defendant wasn't entitled to a preliminary hearing based on the felony charges, he would then become entitled. He or she would then become entitled. Okay, because David's in custody here, still waiting for resolution, because I'm not going to say the trial date. He would be entitled. If for whatever reason the prosecution decided to file some misdemeanor charges into his case, he's not entitled, because people who are facing misdemeanors are not entitled to preliminary hearings, even if they're in custody. Does that make sense? Anyways, all that to say, I think that we should treat this as one step moving forward. I'm glad that the court found probable cause as to the charges that David is currently facing. I had no doubt that if this case were to proceed to preliminary hearing, that this is what the court would find. I mean, it's I'm trying to tell you guys, a prelim is probably one of the easiest hearings I've done throughout my entire career. It's really short. It's really short. It's a short testimony. Let me change that. I meant to say a preliminary hearing is probably the easiest testimonial hearing I've done throughout my career. Meaning, like, that's the easiest hearing where there's live testimony. It's so short. It's so short. It's so short. But yeah, so that's that. I know you guys wanted to hear my take on it, and I wanted to share it with you guys. I know that some of the exhibits have been released as to the prelim, and I know that there are text messages floating around in the ether as well. I'm aware of that. I want to make sure to bring you guys verified sources. I have seen different other outlets, let's say, that have them, but I want to go to the source. You guys know me. If you've been here long enough, I want to go to the source. Once I get to that source and I'm able to bring you those text messages, we'll discuss what they say. It's my understanding that those text messages are not only, they're chilling, they're horrific, and they're chilling. Okay. So for any future videos that I bring to you about this case, I want us all to be mindful. I think I'll just leave it there. I'll just leave it there. Stop it. You stop it right now. Okay. Did you guys enjoy this video? I want you guys to go back and rewatch some of my past David videos for a more in-depth analysis. But here we are, the court found PC, and we're moving forward. Okay. So I didn't want to leave you guys hanging because this deserved an update. This is a really, really crucial and important step. But Go back and rewatch some of my past David videos. You guys remember that I'm offering memberships now. If you want to be a member and become an Esquire specifically, there's 2 different levels, Law Student, Esquire. Esquire, you're paying $4.99 a month, but you'll get videos like these at least 24 hours before anyone else. So if you want to see it, and you want to see it in comfort, because it's a very small group of you guys, right? And you have a separate section where you can chat amongst yourselves and, hopefully not deal with trolling, and just be kind to each other. It's my only, little small community, my own small community that I'm trying to give to you guys and make sure that we're all respectful to one another. But if you like this video, can you like it? Can you comment? Tell me what you like about it. Subscribe to my channel and consider becoming a member. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Until next time, y'all take care.